and hopefully you'll get a bit more time to continue your conversations afterwards, because we'll have time for some more networking and hopefully some more drinks after the chat as well. But I was very keen to get you all seated so that we can start the proceedings with our fantastic guests before they have any more whiskey. Just before we kind of kick off the proceedings, we have a new sponsor that's come on board for 2018, which is excellent. So for Startup Grind, as you may know, the reason that we're able to run these fantastic events is thanks to the support of our sponsors. So I'd just like to welcome Chris Gibson, who's just going to say a couple of words on behalf of Gillespie McAndrew.
Thank you very much and good evening everyone. Gillespie McAndrew is an independent Scottish law firm. We've been around for a long time, but not necessarily that well known for the corporate and commercial world, which is what I do. We're regularly doing transactions in the tens and hundreds of millions, but we find that often the relationships begin very early with a company set up or a seed capital round or a share scheme. Within the team we've got lots of experience of going from incorporation right through to successful exit with clients. So the message I wanted to leave you with is that I think we've got a great offer for startup and early stage businesses, and hopefully we'll get the opportunity to have a chat with you later tonight. Thank you.
That's great, thanks Stuart. Yeah, so before we get started with the main event tonight, I was keen just to get a bit of a show of hands because I do see some new faces along. So has anyone here, could you put your hand up if you've been along to our events before and you know about the community and the format? That's great. It's great to get people coming back again and again. And is there anyone that's not been to a Startup Grind event before? If you can name and shame.
That's fantastic.
So yeah, and so we do, and what we find is we do quite to get a great mix within our community of people that will come to different events depending on the format and the speakers that we have. And it's really great for us to mix it up as well. But for those that don't know, Startup Grind is a global community for entrepreneurs, and we're all about educating, developing and connecting entrepreneurs. So Startup Grind is actually now, it's grown massively worldwide. It was founded in 2010 in Silicon Valley as a network, and is now active in more than 300 city chapters in more than 50 countries around the world. So it's a great network and a great movement. Here in Scotland we've now been running, this is our 4th year operating, and we have monthly events here in Edinburgh and also in Glasgow, where we have entrepreneurs and business leaders who come along and very generously share their time and share their stories with us. And it's all about role model learning, because people that have achieved great things have learned lots of things on the way, and we can all learn from that. But it's very open, it's very friendly, as you'll have found through the networking tonight. This is going to be a conversation, and I'll introduce our speakers in a second. I'm not going to do all the talking, but what I would say is I'm going to ask some questions, and I've got things I want to cover. But it is a conversation, so if you'd like to ask something, you don't need to wait to the end. If you've got a question, please pop your hand up and we'll bring you into the conversation as well. And lastly, we're very social. You see we've got all our Twitter handles on there. Please join in the conversation, please and join in. But without any further ado, I would like to welcome our 2 fantastic speakers tonight. And we've actually travelled up from London to be here with us tonight, which is great. And as it's Burns night, we've been plying them and all of you with a little dram of whiskey as well. So Scottish hospitality at its best. But I would like to welcome Patrick Lilly, who is the CEO of Next Exchange.
Yes.
Next, not any X, Next.
Next
Exchange.
Yeah, not next.
Next Exchange. The disruptive other exchange, other London Stock Exchange. And we'll talk a bit more about why that is and what that is in a little bit. And we also have Malcolm Pally. So Malcolm is, amongst many things, a serial entrepreneur. He's involved with Mining Mavens, which is an investment advisory communications
and sort of information platform, yeah.
Excellent. And the co-founder, as you'll have seen in his profile, of Coincilium, which I understand is involved in blockchain advisory and other things that I'm going to learn a lot about tonight, and I'm sure you all are too. And so thank you so much both for coming up. And they both said that I can ask whichever questions I like tonight, which is great.
We trust you.
They trust me. But yeah, just to get started, I thought it would be really helpful if both of you could just take maybe 5 minutes and introduce yourself and tell us about your career journey and how you've got to where you are now.
Who do you want to start?
I'll start with Patrick
Oh,
and
go
come
on.
towards me.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Lisa. Thank you to you guys for coming. I was born in Elgin. My dad was a teacher at Gordonstoun. He's now an archaeologist on Hadrian's Wall. So all of my family are archaeologists except for me. I'm the odd one out. And I was very fortunate very early in my life, or in my early 20s. I didn't go to university. I was a disappointment to my family academically and all of those things, but I went out travelling, ended up in South Africa or in Southern Africa, and met up with a group of people who were setting up the first futures exchange in Southern Africa. And they said to me, "You're British, you know about this sort of thing." And having recently watched Trading Places with Eddie Murphy, and having no money whatsoever, I said, "Yeah." And I was incredibly fortunate. God, too much risk. To be involved in the start of the South African Futures Exchange during the change from apartheid to free and fair South Africa, which was an extraordinary journey, and we ended up becoming the 12th biggest exchange in the world. As a 33-year-old, I was CEO of this extraordinary entity, which was fantastic. Subsequently, I came back to the UK and have been involved in a number of exchanges. In 2000 God, I'm really boring, 2010, I got pretty disillusioned with the City of London and the finance industry, and I went off to run a brewery down on the Isle of Wight, there's a bit of a sad backstory, but anyway, I married the brewer's daughter, bought the brewery from my father-in-law, subsequently left the brewer's daughter, and had to sell the brewery back to my father-in-law, ex-father-in-law, sorry. But anyway, gosh, how much information do you want? But I was approached. Michael Spencer is a sort of city grandee who was the entrepreneur who started a thing called ICAP, a big interdealer broker. He's very, very successful. He's a guy who I've known for a number of years. And he bought a stock exchange, and he wasn't sure what to do with it. He asked me to get involved, and I joined 4 years ago, or about 4 years ago, because I think it's an extraordinary opportunity. There is a monopoly in terms of stock exchanges in the UK. There was a single operator in essence, and whilst they have done amazing things, they have become completely detached from the community that they were originally there to serve. And I feel that public financing is a fantastically powerful weapon that can be used and has great advantages to people wanting to raise money, to people wanting to get involved in money, and to invest in interesting projects. So when Michael approached me and said, would you like to have a look at this thing and see whether we can make something out of it? That's when I joined what is now called Next Exchange. And that's what we're trying to do. We are trying to create an old-style stock exchange. Not too many rules, but sensible rules which connect investors with issuers and people seeking finance in the most simple and straightforward way. And we're trying to be part of that community. We don't see ourselves as above the community. We want to be part of it. We're trying to be flexible, dynamic, but still have a proper legal and regulatory structure around it, which means that that you can feel some confidence when you invest that these are companies who are serious and we've done the due diligence for. So that's my background. God, it's a long 5 minutes.
No, it's fantastic. Thank you. It's exactly what we wanted. And you're a small team as well. So
We
you're
are.
building something.
We're 14 people, 14 odd people. But yeah, we're a small team, and we work very closely together.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for that.
No,
And Malcolm, what
Yeah.
about yourself?
Well,
Where should we
I
start?
don't know.
Did you come from an entrepreneurial background yourself?
I probably had the right ingredients to actually create an entrepreneur, which is, you know, the need, because we didn't have a whole heap of money, and as I was growing up, and all my friends could afford things that I couldn't.
Okay.
So I was doing sort of bushing cars from a very early age,
Yeah.
and managed to avoid a paper round because I didn't like getting up that much. I had hard enough trouble
You
getting
like
up
to
for
sleep.
school,
Yeah.
let alone getting up at 6 o'clock to do a paper round. I thought, you know, let's work weekends and wash some cars and
Okay.
that, you know, bring in
Yeah.
the money that way.
Yeah.
So yes, I was sort of, I didn't like Patrick, I didn't go to university, that eluded me.
Okay.
And my first job was in travel and tourism, because I love travelling, and I just wanted to get, you know, the idea of actually, I wanted to be a rep, I wanted to work in an overseas resort.
Okay.
That's as an 18, 19-year-old, because I thought, what's not to like? You know,
Yeah.
you've got your
See
own
the world.
place, you've got sun, sea, everything else that goes with it, you know. And so I
You
learned
can say
Spanish.
sex on stage.
It goes without saying, but it was the appeal, and I spoke Spanish. I learnt Spanish at school, and I had a sort of an affinity with Spain. So my immediate idea was in the early 80s. I wanted to go to Ibiza, and I wanted to be a rep.
Okay.
And I got a job in Ibiza as a rep. Well, I got a job to be in Ibiza as a rep, and 2 weeks before I was supposed to go, the company phoned me up and says, "We don't need you in Ibiza because basically the bookings aren't that great, but we have got a new destination we've started, and we want you to go there." So where's that? It's at Romania. So I ended up working 3 seasons on the Black Sea coast in Romania.
So you pivoted.
That was the first pivot, yeah, and that was great because I learnt Romanian. I ended up in a country which was at the time a communist country, and it was a bit strange and different. I learned a lot of skills, and I came back and immediately set up a tour operation specialising in Romania.
Okay. And was that quite a new market?
Well, it was a niche market, and this was sort of something that I've always sort of tried to do throughout my career, is look for opportunities where there aren't too many people competing. So I knew all the people I needed to go to actually get deals and contracts. I knew all the hoteliers. And we set up, I set it up, ran for 3 years or so, and I got bought out, not hugely, but I moved on because the mobile phone business was evolving, and I saw a lot of people making money selling mobile phones. So I got into that, selling mobile phones for £2,000 a piece. Sold one to Ringo. Well, I didn't actually. I went to see Ringo Starr, who I didn't know I was going to see Ringo Starr, but his assistant asked me to, you know, they phoned up the company, and this massive phone, and he took one look at it and he said, "What is it?" I said, "It's a phone." He said, "It's not a phone." It's got buttons on it, but you know, how do you use it? So what I learned from that and sort of going through is that technology, early adopters of technology, are not the people who adopt it later on, but they're the people who are adventurous, and they're the people who actually sort of see the future. Most people don't. Most people see these things beforehand. They don't realise the potential. At the time, we had no idea what mobile phones were going to be in terms of take-up. So I went through that process, but I then realised that there was people were buying phones, but a lot of people were losing them, and they were very expensive to replace.
Okay.
So I left my job and set up a mobile phone insurance company. And I then basically approached all the service providers who weren't selling insurance at the time and offered them schemes with I set up a deal with a Lloyd's underwriter and administrator, and that ran me through for the next 10 years. After that, well, I'll sort of condense it now, but basically I got fed up when a little bit of experience with you, but I got jaded by the city because that insurance company I set up basically launched mobile phone insurance. Now, it's not that glamorous, but the fact of the matter is most service providers, most mobile phone companies make a very nice living out of selling insurance, and I was the one who gave them the idea. So when I'd done my bit and sort of sold insurance to every single company there, they looked at me and said, "Well, you're getting a small margin out of every phone that's insured, and we don't see why we need you anymore."
Okay.
So I got sort of put into a corner, took a deal I had to take, and I said, "I don't want to see you lot again," and I moved to Nottingham and opened a hotel.
Okay.
Which I ran for 2 years, a small guest house, and I just didn't want anything to do with any in London, and I was turning into Basil 40 by that time. And, so came back to London with a little bit of money and started investing in mining companies, which I had no idea what I was doing, but I did like gold, and I sort of got into that space. So that led me into sort of appreciating a lot of these mining companies didn't really know how to communicate with their investors, and established Mining Maven, which was and I did interviews with them, and I just helped them with their communications, which wasn't a particular training I had, but it was something that sort of came quite natural to me. So that's how that started, and then I fell into Bitcoin in 2013 because of the connection with gold and the whole sort of comparison of the limited amount of units out there, and then I realised there was a big opportunity with blockchain technology, and co-founded Coincilium with a colleague of mine, Eddie Travie, who's now our CEO, listed on the Next Exchange in December 2015, and yes, that's where we are now. So
fantastic. And there's a theme here about spotting trends, is what I can see. You know, how do you know when something's going to be big?
cool.
Put you on the spot.
I don't know. It's intuition, is it? I mean, but it is, you know, and it's such a difficult thing. And I think at the time you don't. Certainly, from my point of view, you don't do it because you've spotted a trend. You do it because you're in the right place. Somebody talks about it. It kind of piques your interest. From my very selfish point of view, I'm not interested. I'm not interested in making money. Making money has to come second. You have to be doing something you want to do. My South African experience was very much that we wanted to provide products that would help the South African economy grow as it went through its transition. I used to run something called the European Climate Exchange, which was about introducing a trading mechanism to help manage climate change, and I felt that that was a really worthwhile thing. We ended up making a reasonable amount of money. And in terms of the stock exchange that I run now, I feel that I feel that people are being ripped off, and I want to do something about it. So for me, it's not necessarily spotting a trend. It's about doing something that you feel is worthwhile, and I think that that's important.
And that leads on to a question I had. So why is Next different? What is the disruptive aspect of what you do now?
Well, we are different because we're trying to appeal to smaller companies. We want to get engaged with early stage companies. We are easy to deal with, straightforward. You know, you talk to me, you talk to Max, my colleague, or to one of the 14 in my team. We will try and engage with you. We will try and fit what we do to what you want to achieve, and we will try and do that at a reasonable price. I mean, you know, that's in honesty, public markets have become incredibly expensive things. I mean, going on to AIM is probably a £600,000 process. It shouldn't be. On our market, I hope it would be 150 or less, which is still a big number, and we'd like to reduce that over time. But it's trying to make public markets something real, where I want to invest in interesting companies like Coincilium. I want to be able to get in. I recognise that they are risky. I recognise that it may fail or it may succeed, but I want somebody like Malcolm as chairman of this company to be, you know, appropriate with disclosure, to have the right legal setups, so that he's a decent guy trying to do a decent job. He might fail, and we acknowledge that. But we want. But he may succeed, and so we want to provide a facility where somebody like Malcolm can access capital at a reasonable price, and we can facilitate that, and that's what we're trying to do.
And in terms of the Bitcoin industry, my understanding is that there's not a huge amount of regulation around it at the moment, and it gets a lot of press, and it can be risky. Why is it a space that people should be looking at?
Yeah, it's I think that it's very early in this evolution to actually even sort of get a handle about, for the average person to get a handle on what it is. And we refer to the industry from our perspective as blockchain technology, because that is the technology behind Bitcoin and behind other cryptocurrencies, but also behind all the activity in this sector. Now, there's it could take you can explain blockchain in many different ways, and it is a little bit sort of counterintuitive and often hard for people to actually understand. But the simple version is that instead of a central computer server where everything is stored, you have a decentralized network of nodes, and all the processing power is pushed to the edges, so that all the information is stored on each of those nodes, so that if one goes down, the others function just as well. So it's a structure. It's about the structure of actual data and the structure of actually putting propositions in place. Of course, the issues with it and the risk is when you look at it from the point of view of the cryptocurrency, and that really is an element of the whole technology, but it can be distracting when you look at it that way around.
Okay.
So regulation is probably what people consider when they look at the cryptocurrency side. In other words, the price of the tokens, the coins, the units, and they are tradable, so there is a price attached to them, and the fact that they've come from a sort of pretty much a ground level movement. This sector wasn't launched by IBM, although they're playing in it now. It came from the ground up. So rules will follow, regulation will follow, but regulation is something that you really best to enforce when you actually know what you're regulating. And that's something that's probably going to happen a little bit more this year.
Okay. And we're hearing more and more about blockchain, but what are the industries that are going to be disrupted by blockchain, and where's that going to come out?
I don't think there's an industry that wouldn't be. And it's also not just about disruption, because disruption suggests that you're coming along and shaking people up. Well, that is an inevitable process when people are complacent. There's as much opportunity for incumbents, for banks, for all the existing industries to go out and embrace this new process, this new technology, and make it their own. It just so happens that the young entrepreneurs pick up on this, know exactly what they want to do with it, see that the incumbent industries are sort of resting on their laurels, or perhaps not embracing it, and they see the opportunity. That's where it sort of looks like disruption.
I've read exciting things even from my own industry, so I run an HR business, and I've read about the opportunities in blockchain identity, and it's about protection of individuals as well.
Yeah.
The other thing is it's immutable. You see, this ledger is immutable. So when you're talking about keeping records, they can't be tampered with because they're encrypted and they're kept on various different servers. So you've got a way of ensuring that all the records are completely there's no issue with trust. People who don't trust each other because they don't know each other can transact in that trustless environment. So that's perfect for records and data.
So there's opportunity there as well, and it's exciting. And obviously you're actually from Scotland originally, you said, family background, but you're up here just now. In terms of the Scottish ecosystem and the tech sector up here, what kind of things do you think are exciting? What have you seen?
I think for me it's difficult to comment on the Scottish tech sector specifically, but it's really about what the blockchain is enabling, and the blockchain is enabling a one-man operation or a 10-person, one-woman a 10-person operation to compete with the biggest corporates. I mean, you can smash IBM tomorrow on a single product line using blockchain technology, and I think that this openness about it, if you see an inefficiency in the way that you operate, and any of us who have worked for big corporates see inefficiency all the time, you can solve it, and you can solve it in a credible way which is, as Malcolm says, it's you know, the records are all checked, and so with a bright mind, you can come up with real solutions, and it doesn't matter whether you are in Zambia, Edinburgh. It doesn't matter. It's not relevant any longer. So live in a beautiful place and do your work. And I have to say Edinburgh's a beautiful place, otherwise you'll lynch me. But on a sunny day, Edinburgh's a beautiful place. So yeah, I think that, you know, again, it's about places like Codebase and the ability to come here, share ideas, look at ways to fix problems, put them together, and to use blockchain technology, which has this sort of this credibility behind it, which you might not have had without blockchain being around, and I think that's very important.
Okay, fascinating. And you must both see lots of types of business propositions and ideas. What are the types of things that you look for in a business? Do you think that's got legs, that's investable, say?
That's a really interesting question. Because it's not just about the idea, and
Yeah.
invariably the idea comes from the people in the team. And for me, and it's not always the case with other people, I really, my starting point is the team and the management,
Okay.
the people.
Yeah.
Because Patrick was alluding to doing what you enjoy, doing what you feel is going to make a difference. And that's the philosophy that is perhaps driving the entrepreneurs, because that's an important factor as to what makes you investable, makes someone investable. If they're doing something just for the money, invariably that can lead to imbalances down the line, and maybe it's about taking shortcuts. Maybe it's about sort of doing things that are not with the same integrity as you would do them if you were doing them for the right reasons. And so you get I need to meet entrepreneurs, and I need to get to know, if we are considering an investment in their proposition, I need to know them in the round, and I need to know where that proposition, their idea, their project, at whatever level it's at, is coming from.
Okay.
So that's, I would say, the starting point for me.
And if you
I agree.
do,
Can I just
sorry,
just interrupt? I mean, I agree with Mark, and team is important, but one of the things that you also really have to focus in on, and it's sort of slightly sort of, I don't really want to say it, but you have to market yourself as well. You know, I don't care how bright you are or how passionate you are, if you can't look me in the eyes and have a conversation with me, and kind of like sell yourself a bit, it's going to be really difficult to get people to invest in you. So you know, however nerdy you are or hoodie you are or whatever it is that you might be, you've got to be able to engage a bit. And you don't have to, don't be conventional, don't wear a suit, don't dress how you feel if you feel uncomfortable, but you've got to be able to engage and sell it. And one of our companies on our market recently, Chapel Down Wines, who are an English wine producer, they've just raised £20 million. I mean, they are, you know, they were only worth, I don't know, 3 years ago they were worth 5 million or 10 million. They're now worth 110 million. They've just raised another £20 million. And the CEO, he's a marketing machine. He's fantastic. He's passionate about what he does, but he really thinks, what would an investor like to know about? And I know that he recently, he got an investor, or somebody who he thought might be an investor, and he helicoptered them around Kent to show them the terroir of the vineyards that he wanted to. Now he was just smart. It's like clever, it's thoughtful. So yes, you have to care about, but you do have to market yourself. You can't shuffle around and not look at people in the eye and not get engaged and hope to get money.
you've got to sell that passion.
Yeah.
You've got to get a helicopter.
You might have you might have to rent one occasionally. So
And I guess maybe a question for you, but how many types of approaches and pitches do you see, like, you get?
Well, I mean, we get them. I personally get about 2 or 3 a day on LinkedIn, which is a lot because you have to sort of you have to filter them. You have to decide what the basis of the approach is. And as a company, I would say we get between 15 and 20 a week.
Okay.
But there have been more in the past because this sector is on fire.
Yeah.
It certainly has been. It's sometimes unsolicited approaches are sometimes they are difficult to deal with because you're taking the good with the bad, and it's not always ideal. So we've sort of set up a template now where if anyone approaches us, we send them this template back, and the first line of it is, please outline your idea in 3 sentences.
Okay.
And I think that that's the hardest thing to do, because to communicate, to condense it in a way that as soon as I read that, I know exactly what you're trying to say. So I would hope that if we send them that back, they would spend a lot of that time in not doing a brain dump, but thinking about how they're going to communicate to us about what their proposition is in a concise way that I understand. And that does work, because when we get them back, we know pretty much from the starting point, the ones that we get straight away are the ones that get the most immediate attention.
Mm. And have you had propositions that come to you where it's not a no, but maybe it's a not right now, and maybe things need to come back, or is it usually quite clear cut?
That's definitely the case in our market. I mean, again, from a public financing point of view, if you're going to go out to the public, you have to be ready, and you've got to be prepared to put in the corporate governance discipline. You've got to be prepared to have non-executive directors. You've got to get your records right. You've got to get your accounting background set up and established. As a public market, you have to be ready to act professionally, to let people know what you're doing. So from our point of view, yes, definitely. You've got to put in a lot of groundwork. You're not going to go straight from idea to a paycheck.
You're looking for traction.
You've got to get traction. You've got to be able to present a story and make sure that you've got a team in place who will. Entrepreneurs are wonderful, but they're also maverick lunatics very often, and they need checks and balances. They need a grey-haired old man to occasionally just let's okay, this is a great idea, but are we going to bet the house on it? Because otherwise, so you need a bit of checks and balances, and that's what, from a public markets point of view, you have to be ready for that.
And from a listing perspective, what type of revenue would typically
Well, revenue is a great issue. You can have no revenue whatsoever. You can still, from our point of view, you have to have been going for a year, so you have to have a company. You have to, but no, you can be loss making. You can have no revenue. You can be pre-revenue, but it's about the momentum you've got. So you've got to have an investable idea. And you've got to have enough credibility around the team and what it is, how you're going to approach it to attract real money.
Okay. And one of the things that we talk about quite a lot with our speakers at Startup Grounds, people often stand up and talk about all the things that they've done that have gone, well, and what successes that we've had. But sometimes, we benefit as a community from learning about, when have people been involved in things and that's maybe not gone as planned, and what have they learned from that? Have either of you got any stories that you would be happy to share on that basis? That's a harder question.
That's a good question.
Is that a good space to go into?
Yeah.
Not
No,
personal?
I've had some total disasters in my career. A lot more disasters than I've had successes. I'm absolutely shocking from a personal point of view at corporate stuff. I can't do it. It just drives me insane. I end up saying the wrong thing or being inappropriate and getting fired. So that happens, but that's knowing yourself. Again, to me, this issue keeps on coming back. But if you don't believe in it, don't do it. And it can be tempting sometimes to get involved in things which are, it all seems fine, but it doesn't really get you. So, from my point of view, that's always been the thing that's been a bit of a disaster. And I worked for the London Stock Exchange, the other stock exchange, for a short period. They paid me for 6 months while I renovated my house in Brittany, but thankfully. But you know, I've got and something like brewing. I mean, it was a fantastic experience. But I've been very fortunate to work in the financial markets, where if you are successful, you can do very, very well financially. In something like brewing, it's really tough, right? The margins are minute. You're competing with huge numbers of people. So, you know, again, I found that eye-opening, apart from the marriage issues, but you know, just being involved in a real industry relative to a service business for me was a huge surprise and something that I wasn't expecting.
And would you say it's good for entrepreneurs to have maybe experienced different types of environments before they build a business? Or?
I think no. If you believe it, just go for it. Don't just shut everybody else out and just go for it. Of course, experience is a wonderful thing, but naivety is also a fabulous quality.
And what about you, Mark? I'm not going to let you off that earlier.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, I mean, one of my more notable failures was I started an inkjet distribution company because I thought I had all the elements in place to make it work. Now, I knew someone who was quite established in that business, and it was just about getting a brand and getting it into shops. And it was such a struggle because merchandising, I realised after I started, I had no idea about it. I'd never done it before. I'd done a lot of things. I understood that the market for inkjet cartridges at the time, which was in the early 2000s, was growing, and there were, you know, I had the ability to, or the connections to get them at a good price, but I had to, I struggled to actually do that merchandising bit, which is basically getting them into shops, getting shops to then pay for them, because they didn't know whether they were going to sell them or not. Then I had to fund the shops, and then we had to get people to go around and top them up, and all of a sudden I found myself in up to my neck in a business that I had no idea how to run, and to be honest with you, that's when I realised I wasn't passionate about inkjet cartridges.
Unbelievable.
So you got some questions?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, okay, we'll go over here first. Yeah.
So about a year ago, I was just a contractor, just a normal guy working. Set up a startup, I've gone through that journey. I find it really hard changing from that person to the person I'm supposed to be. I'm not even sure if I am that guy yet. Any advice?
It's such a great question, and I really do. I have to sympathise. And again, you know, I've worked in corporate environments where you know, frankly, you can cruise for ages and it doesn't really matter. To suddenly you're an entrepreneur, and if nothing happens, you're not going to get anything. And who am I? I go from getting 50 emails a day through my BlackBerry, which somebody else has paid for, to getting one Gmail, if I'm lucky, on a phone that I hope they're not going to send me a big file because I don't want to download it. So there is a sort of ego shift that sort of happens around getting into this environment. So I'm not sure that I can offer any practical advice, only that you know, when the corner turns, and if you get some momentum, the uplifting feeling of running your own thing, being in control of your own destiny, deciding, is just so different to any feeling that you would have ever had leaving the office that you were being paid to be at. So
the bags under the eyes are worth it then.
well, somehow they, you know, I hope they will be for you, but there's no guarantee, right? And that's that's risk. You know, you're taking risk, but I just, from a personal point of view, I can't imagine that the risk is not worth taking.
So just talking about risk, so we're just signing our directors agreement stuff. So we're all directors now. I saw a figure on the contract, which is, you know, my personal liability for a company. How often does it turn out when things go wrong, you end up having to, you know, sell your house?
That's a tough question to put the guy.
Yeah, wow. Well, you've got to take. I mean, it's risk, right? It's you know, it is risk. I think it happens quite often. But again, I think that serial entrepreneurs who I've met over time have all, you know, lost money, made money, been through it several times. And I think that there is a UK thing that we're a bit ashamed of failure. We're a bit ashamed of losing our houses occasionally.
It's inconvenient, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not shame, it's just inconvenient.
It is inconvenient, but I don't know. Like, I'd rather be on the journey and lose a house and make a house and hopefully make it back than not be on the journey.
But that's a good point as well, isn't it? Because in the US, for example, I think we have quite a different approach to failure in terms of sometimes it's celebrated. You know, what have we learned and what do we do after that?
It's also with regard to the idea of sort of putting what's on the you're on the line for the potential losses. You don't just end up in a situation where your house is on the you're going to lose your house. You should know at every stage in the journey what you're putting your name to and what you're signing. So the most important thing about being a director and being your own person and having equity in your own vehicle and being responsible for your own destiny is the responsibility of actually ensuring that, you don't just, when you sign that, a lot of things go in that. There's a lot of things to think about, because that's the point where you can just do it and sort of with a blindfold or with your blinkers on, or you can think, what am I actually signing here? And then you look at the people you're working with, and you look at everyone's interest, and you actually make sure that you are doing this soberly, and you're saying, okay, we're all on the same page here. I'm not just, trust your gut. I would say that's a very important thing. Just be in touch with that feeling. Think, am I doing the right thing? But ultimately, as Patrick said, I've lost a house, and it's not pleasant. You do manage it. So in other words, if you do it properly, you don't actually end up on the street. But you do actually know, you understand when you're actually borrowing money, what is at stake, when you actually have to do, when you have to, when push comes to shove.
Your business failing won't be as bad as getting divorced. Sorry.
Did I ask another question at the back?
Well, it's also connected to that. When you talk about that journey, and you talk about failure, the resilience, and you've both spoken about quite a lot of personal things. How do you manage coping with those failures, those setbacks, those on a personal level? How do you find the strength to continue and go on to the next thing? Because that is some of the discussion you think about all this, mental health and how to manage your businesses going forward as individuals. How do you yourselves?
Oh, it's a fabulous question. So
Deep tonight.
no, and it's a good question, and I will answer you with absolute honesty. I'm a massive depressive. I've been suicidal several times in my life. I'm an active Samaritan, and counsel people every week on mental health issues. It gets hard at times, right? Your self-confidence gets ripped apart, and you can go from highs to lows, and you've got to be conscious of it, aware of it, thoughtful about it. It's not going to be. This is not easy street, right? Entrepreneurs is if you want to get involved, be prepared to take the tumbles, and hopefully have a support network around you who believe in your energy and believe in your passion, and are able to support you through the tough times. So it's a really good question, and one of the best I've ever heard. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, it's I've had the similar kind of experiences when you are in a dark place, and you can be, because things didn't go right, and you're paying the price because you've risked your own security. I remember going probably 2009, which isn't a whole long time ago. I'd sort of seen the worst side of the global financial crisis. I had to move out of London when I moved back after another venture, and just to sort of keep my costs down and decide what I was going to do next. I didn't have an income. I didn't have a job. I didn't have I had sort of things going on, and a very small pot of money which was diminishing, and that sort of dark place that you're in. I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine, very good friend of mine, and I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I do not know. I knew because I don't consider myself as employable, and for
You're
whatever.
not.
And so I need the inspiration and the idea, and something that I can put my life into. And if that's not there, I'm sort of in this dark place. And this friend of mine, I said, I have no idea what I'm going to do next. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I, as I'm saying this to him, I'm feeling extremely depressed. And I spent probably the best part of 6 months hardly ever getting out of bed. And out of that, something came up, which was Bitcoin. And just the emergence of that space, and the fact that I created a void around me so that there was no other distractions, and I just looked at that and thought, well, let's see if I can do something in this space. And if I was to sort of chart the journey between there and setting up Coincide, I probably wouldn't be able to do it that effectively, but because it would have been impossible to actually imagine you can do these things. But one of my favourite quotes is from Goethe, which was something about, I can't remember it offhand, but do it now, and it's about the fact that the universe conspires to actually make things happen once you're committed. And just saying you're going to do it, or just looking and thinking about it, but committing yourself, and if you've got your belief behind you, that sort of kick-starts everything else, and coincidences happen, chance happens, and you take advantage of it. But anyway, that's...
Yeah, no, I'd just like to thank Jess for that question, and just something I would chip in, in terms of Startup Grind, it was founded ourselves, the founder of Startup Grind in Silicon Valley, it came from that place in terms of it's very lonely to start a business and lead a business, and our values as a community, one of them is make friends, not contacts, and it's about sharing some of those challenges. So I'd like to thank you for that. Did I have another question, Claudia?
I'm sorry. Just staying on a personal level, if that's okay. So talking about gender and age diversity in the entrepreneurial community, and obviously most of the entrepreneurs tend to be male. Is there a reason why this is happening? From your experiences, like your like-minded friends or co-workers, are they male as well? And then, is there a right time, to become entrepreneur? Do you need to do it when you're in your 20s, or are you better off doing it in your 40s?
So probably two questions there, actually.
Yeah.
Are you seeing more diversity coming through?
I don't see... I think an entrepreneur is a type. I don't think it's sort of a sex thing. I think there's a tendency for males to perhaps feel that they are more disposed to being entrepreneurs, but we come across women entrepreneurs who've got the same qualities and attributes, and I don't think it's something that one should feel, even whatever the stats are, that it's something that should impact whether you decide to do it or not, because it's a quality, a feel, and a drive, and it's a type of person who is going to do that. What was the next question? Sorry.
No, just and I'm not. Again, I don't want to be too politically correct here, but I also want to be honest. I have 3 daughters. I think generationally, 3 daughters who are aged between 19 and 25, and all 3 of them are entrepreneurial people. And one of the things I've encouraged, one of the things with that generation that I'm finding is that they have no hope of owning property. I mean, unless Dad does really well, which is on his track record is not that good. But so they have no hope of owning property. So they rent. And one of the things I've been trying to encourage them to do is don't build up your commitments so that you can be entrepreneurial. So don't end up with having to have money to spend every month. Be entrepreneurial. And I think that the generation that I see in that sort of 20 to 30 age group, if they're able to survive without building up commitments, it's got nothing to do with their race, their sex, or anything else. They can be entrepreneurial, and they can be encouraged to get out there and to try things and not build up commitments. So I certainly, I don't know about our generation, but I certainly think in the younger generation there's no differentiation at all, and I find that really encouraging.
What do you think about diversity on boards?
Oh, wow.
Are you in favour of quotas?
Quotas?
I'm definitely, so I just answered that. No,
No.
absolutely not. I come, and again, I spent 14 years in South Africa during a very interesting period where we had positive discrimination, which I thought was the best policy ever. I think it's a really, really good thing at times to introduce positive discrimination. But I think that quotas is demeaning. I think people must succeed because the issues aren't there. So personal view, but
Okay. Yep.
Yeah,
It was an open question.
I think it just puts the emphasis on the wrong thing. If you actually think about the concept of quotas, it's just a numbers thing, isn't it? And it doesn't really put the emphasis on quality.
Okay.
And quality comes out as it comes out. If I don't think that any sensible entrepreneur, businessman, woman would have an issue with the sex of someone's sex as a starting point. And there are, roles that within our company that they're not necessarily gender specific. We do have a tendency in our industry, and blockchain particularly, which is quite male dominated. But when a woman comes along, invariably she makes a mark. And that's something that isn't necessarily hunted out, but it's just that they get involved, and maybe it's because they're in the minority and they actually feel that they can make a difference. But again, I suppose if you look at the whole IT sector, maybe that is a little bit more male dominated than female. So I think there are probably other reasons for that, and that's because maybe they want the gender issue when it comes to playing with computers or playing with other kinds of toys when they're
We'll probably
younger.
have a much longer. I think that's
Yeah.
So the second part of Claudia's question was, I think, about are entrepreneurs more successful at an early stage in career,
Yeah.
or maybe later
Yeah.
stage with other businesses behind them. I don't know if you've seen that.
I think that you have different qualities at different ages. You've got bundles of energy in your 20s. It's not always channeled in the right direction, but it does compensate for a lot of flaws if you actually keep getting knocked down and keep picking yourself up again and making a few mistakes and get it right. And I think that the entrepreneurial ventures that I got involved in my 20s, I did the hard way.
Okay.
But nonetheless eventually got there. But definitely did the hard way, and made a lot of mistakes that I wouldn't have made when I was older.
Okay.
So I think that it's not really an age thing, but it's certainly, if you want to start, I think the sooner you start, if you feel that's what you want to do, the better, because the more mistakes you'll make, the more things you'll learn, the more experience you'll get.
Fantastic. Thank you.
just quickly to add, I think I've had 4 or 5, possibly 6 midlife crises. I think that if you, again, this thing about safety, if there's any way you can break away from your mortgage and your commitments and kind of free up your life a little bit, then I think there's never a bad time to give it a go and have a go. If you believe in what you want to do, just get out there and do it.
Did you have a question, Marlene?
So following up on Malcolm's comment about start early, get them started early, and tying in what Patrick said about we have no hope of owning our own houses, which I agree with. How about if you started, to a certain extent, teaching entrepreneurship or introducing the ideas of entrepreneurship in kids when they're 10, 11, 12 years old, as opposed to targeting them when they're starting university? Do you think that would maybe solve that issue of not being able to buy your own house, and maybe start introducing entrepreneurship and the ideas and more ideas into the world? Could that be a solution?
I genuinely don't think that this is about, I think that we should encourage, I don't know that you can teach on, I think encouraging people to take risks encouraging people not to be politically correct all the time. That's a good thing. Teaching tends to restrict, encouraging tends to empower, and I think we need to empower people, not teach them, but
I think
philosophically that might be different.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's you know, your personality develops as you get older, as you grow up, and a 10-year-old's personality is probably established in the confidence that he has or she has, and the experience and the environment. And I think certain things will possibly start to identify themselves in terms of qualities as to whether they could have the basis of an entrepreneur, or the germ of that quality. But I think that the most important thing that goes with it is an understanding of finance, an understanding of money, a responsibility around money, and a way of. I think you're never too young to actually understand the responsibility of finance. So that in itself would probably spark a lot of other ideas from and thought processes from a young person if they actually and we don't get that. We don't really understand that the responsibility that we have over for our finances, or should have.
Okay.
And
So something to think about in education.
yeah, I think so. I think it's important. I learnt the hard way, because I was quite spendthrift. I think that in my teens I managed to get jobs that paid me very well, and just working in shoe shops in Bond Street where I was getting £30-50 tips, and just hanging around with people with lots of money, and I did very well. So, but that didn't teach me a discipline of actually saving, and how important it was to actually deal with situations where you actually have to leverage yourself. So I think that could be important.
That's a great answer. Thank you. And I think I've got time just for a couple more questions, and I've got a last question because I'm conscious of your time as well. And so, Steve, did you have a question?
So I just wanted to start by saying, since you guys have been on stage, my crypto portfolio has gone up by 0.5% after quite a bad week. So it might be working quite well. So thank you for that.
Is that in the last half an hour?
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
amazing.
It kind of went up and then it started to go down. So it's been an
It's
interesting.
it's been like every other day ever since that. It's like
So my question, I guess, is two parts for yourself, just based off of that. So we're kind of in store for an interesting year regarding blockchain, crypto. A lot of regulations are set. So I wanted to get your thoughts on what 2018 might have in store. And then the second part, what top 3 ICOs do you have that you would recommend?
See, I told him I didn't know the right questions.
No, that is you saved that till last, didn't you? Okay, I think I've just got back from the North American Bitcoin conference in Miami. 4,500 psychopathic lunatics, all into this space like you can't believe, and evangelists. It was great. It was great to see. And these ICO pitches were like really. The whole thing was at fever pitch. It actually is a sort of the responsible side of me thinks this is getting scary.
Yeah.
And because there's undoubtedly, if I don't know how many people know what ICOs are, but they're basically ways companies can raise money without issuing equity. And it's a sort of bit of quirk of this cryptocurrencies and the way they work, in the sense that these tokens can act. Well, I mean, the companies can sell tokens which sort of give access to their platform. So it's a totally new way of raising money, and it's a totally new way of actually engaging with investors, and it's a hell of a craze. So the first question was
trends for 20.
Yeah,
trends we picked up from the regulatory panels. There was there's no question that regulation is going to be real. This is when it's going to happen. It's going to become, no one's going to get away with anything anymore, because this is a whole unregulated space. As our company, I won't sort of dwell on it, but our company has set up a division subsidiary in Gibraltar, which is bringing its own regulatory framework out, which we actually did at the beginning of the year for distributed ledger technology, including blockchain. And that's going to give certainty in the sense that companies can get bank accounts, there'll be a structure of how they do their token sale, or how companies operate when there's a transfer of value, and there'll be a set of rules and a set of guidelines. And hopefully that will establish itself as a very sort of a clear, give a lot of clarity for companies who want to enter in this space. But I think on a global level, you will see the SEC and the CFTC, exactly, coming together, aligning their thoughts on exactly what they're not going to tolerate anymore. And
that would be remarkable, because they've been
well,
at war with each other on other financial regulations for about 20 years. So if they do manage it in crypto,
well, they've come up with a joint statement over the last couple of days.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that's sort of saying we're serious. So I think you're going to see a lot of the spoofs, a lot of the hype start coming out of the space. I'm not sure how that's going to impact on the prices or the tokens, you know, the way these things work, but I think it's a maturity. The market is going to mature, and you're going to see real propositions coming to the fore, and the ideas on the back of a cigarette pack or just a white paper that's full of, exactly, are going to start going where they need to go.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give you my top ICOs for this year because I don't know what they are yet, but I know that we've done.
And we're not here to give financial
No,
advice.
no.
Financial advice is don't get into
This is the last kind of topic where it's not even financial advice, it's just tips, isn't it?
Of course.
And I think that just keep an eye on the ones that are getting the most attention, and you know, just sort of analyse and read the white paper, see what they're doing, just make sure the right people are involved. I think we're going to start seeing big brand names associating themselves with, and I don't want to mention Arsenal, which Max told me about, but you know, that's just an example of the kind of things. Kodak as well, and
So I'm going to open for one last question, and then I've got my last question.
You
So
keep
it was
on teeing up
actually
your
it was
last
at the
question.
back. I saw someone at the back there with the beard.
Malcolm, I don't think you'd be getting off too easy if nobody asked you a difficult and probing question about Bitcoin. So here goes it. The Oracle of Omaha himself has come out and said that Berkshire Hathaway will never hold a position in any cryptocurrency ever.
Right.
I'm not sure how it's going to end, and I'm sure it will all end in tears.
right.
I'm sure you'll tell us he's wrong, but I'm not sure.
Well, I don't know.
Can I interrupt you
Yeah.
first? Because he also said that he would never ever trade a derivative in his life, and he's a big Berkshire Hathaway are big derivative traders now. So, in the same way that Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan 6 months ago was saying cryptocurrency is a bubble and never going to happen, and he's now reversed his position. I mean, I really think that maybe, I know he is the sage, but he's very old.
So I don't know if you want to add to that.
Sorry. I answered your
I
question.
would just say that I will
Couldn't resist.
never ever own a Berkshire Hathaway.
Can't afford one.
Exactly.
So we always close our events with asking.
A
And
song?
we've all.
No.
If you want to volunteer, that's fine. But we've had loads of nuggets already, which has been fantastic. But I always ask our speakers, what would be your top 3 pieces of advice for entrepreneurs, that might be starting out on their journey? What would be your top 3 tips? And I'll start with Patrick because he looks.
Oh, thanks, Lisa. That's when I said I didn't want you to tell me any of your questions beforehand. I wish I had.
You did say that.
Top three is only do things that you really care about and feel passionate about. Commit fully and have fun. So sorry, there's the only nuggets I can think of. But have fun is really important.
I'd say they resonate with things you've talked about today. So
Good.
That's great, thank you. And
I concur with it, all those, because that's exactly the same way as I feel about what I'm doing. I think it's important to take responsibility for what you're doing. If you feel that you want to be an entrepreneur, it's not just an idea, it's not just something that it should be done on a whim. And you have to sort of really think through the reasons why you're doing it, because it's not for everyone. And that's not to say that anyone who's not thinking like an entrepreneur is any less of a person or lesser. It's just not that, you know, there's a lot of insecurity goes with it, a lot of compensating factors that, you know, there's a lot of benefits when you get it right, but ultimately, but not everyone does, and also, you know, you sacrifice things along the way, which you know, everything comes with a price.
Okay.
So I'm not sure that's one, but if you can stretch that to 2 or 3,
Okay.
enjoy. The other thing is that don't take yourself too seriously, and don't take the whole process too seriously. It should be about enjoying it, because you know, embracing the risk that you're taking, and making sure that you've got. That's actually another thing. Tear yourself away from anyone who's negative around you. It's so important, and you know, there's a distinction between negativity and practical advice, but ultimately there are people we all know who have just programmed in such a way is that if someone else is succeeding, well, they're not. They can't help but sort of try and drag you down. And
Call them like energy vampires.
Yeah. Stay away from them, or you know.
Yeah.
And when you've done what you set out to do, just go and sort of shove it down their throat.
Well, I think that's a great note to end on. I would just really like to say, like, thank you to you both for being so open and everything that you've shared.
Pleasure.
Thanks for coming up today.
What
It's been wonderful to host you, and
No,
I've
pleasure.
learned lots. I'm sure everyone else has as well. So,
Just want to say, I was actually a little bit of at a quandary when Patrick was going through all his Scottish connections and roots, and it dawned on me in the end, I've got a Scottish name. And that's it.
I've got a little, I can't quite reach it, I've got a little, oh, here's Stephen. Just a little something as a thank you for
Oh,
was it?
wow.
Thank you
Sorry,
very
it's
much.
not whiskey,
No,
unfortunately.
that's very kind of you. Thank you. That's
Thank you very much.
unexpected, but thank you very much.
Just a little thank you.
Thank you.
So I would also like to thank all of our sponsors who make this possible for us. So thank you to ESS Startup, which is recruitment solutions for growing SMEs. Thank you very much to Gillespie McAndrew, who've come on board with us from this month. And thanks also very much to our other sponsors as well, 4Bytes, who have IT solutions. So Marlene helped us with that, and to everyone else that's involved with us. So thank you so much. Scintilla, that's Glenn from Scintilla. So it's IP solutions. So thank you, Glenn. And we're back next month again. I was thinking of Peter, and that's where I got lost in life tonight. And next month we're back as well, and we've got Adopt an Intern. So the founder of Joy Lewis of Adopt an Intern is coming along to talk about their journey, which is really exciting. But thanks also to everyone for coming along tonight. So thanks very much. I'm tired by the end. Thanks for coming again. See you next
We're always up.
Yeah,
That was fantastic. It was great. Lisa makes it so easy. Yeah.